The legend of Acid Park was one of North Carolina's most popular urban legends about 20 years ago, especially if you went to ECU. Folks told of a property out in Lucama, North Carolina, which is about halfway between Raleigh and Greenville. The story goes that a man who lived out in Lucama had a daughter who went to prom in the early 70s, and on her way to prom, she and her date dropped acid, or LSD for those of you who aren't down. They were dazzled by the psychedelic expressions of their minds as they danced the night away, but then when it was time for the girl to be home for curfew, she and her date started their way down the dark and winding road out to her father's property, besieged by visions of acid atrocities. And as they're making their way back to her home out on the outer reaches of town, her date swerves off the road to miss a hallucination and slams into a tree, killing her instantly. The young man dragged himself up the steps of his date's father's house and clutching the old man's lapels, he told the father of his date how his horrible visions had claimed the life of his only daughter. And then the young man took his last breath and crumpled into a heap. Ever since that night, the father himself had also been plagued by the visions that led to his daughter's demise, and he began building these horrible kinetic sculptures in his backyard that spun and twirled as the wind passed through his property. And there was a fence around the backyard of the property that college kids coming from ECU would drive out to late at night after they stopped off at Taco Bell, and they would peer over the edges and they would see the horrible, monstrous figures of a deranged man as he toiled away in the memory of his lost daughter. As it was a man by the name of Wallace Simpson, who was a folk artist who started doing these kinetic sculptures he called windmills and then whirligigs. In fact, he created some artwork for the 1996 Olympic Committee. In 2010, the New York Times did a feature story about Wallace Simpson and his innovative whirligigs. There's been so much press about Wallace Simpson in the years since, and in fact, the town of nearby Wilson has created the Wallace Simpson Whirligig Park and museums to honor the legacy and the artwork of this man. You can see Wallace's artwork across the state, including at the North Carolina Museum of Art and at the I-95 entrances into the state at our welcome centers. Wallace passed in 2013. But his legacy lives on as one of North Carolina's most celebrated folk artists.